So today we're going to be looking at the gospel reading. There's really two distinct stories here. You probably noticed. And at first it seems like they have nothing to do with each other. But I believe that the gospel writer Luke wanted us to see the connection between them, even as like Jesus intended them to be. And these consecutive stories tell the tale of blindness and sight, both physical and spiritual. We also want to draw a parallel between two titles that are given to Jesus: the Son of Man, which Jesus said of himself in the first story, in kind of Act 1 of our gospel reading, and that's from Daniel 7:13. He speaks of his mission as the Son of Man. He's God who took upon flesh in order to redeem our flesh. The divine took on humanity in the title Son of Man. And the blind beggar uses another title. He calls him Son of David just a few verses later, which speaks of his genealogy, Jesus' genealogy, his family. He was born of a woman, a descendant of David, but that he is God. So that we see the humanity is united with the divine, and we'll get more into that. So scene 1 of our gospel reading. Jesus and the disciples are on the way to Jerusalem for the final time before the crucifixion. Jesus is crucified. They're just outside Jericho. And for the third time in the book of Luke, third time, Jesus tells his disciples what will happen to him. This one in much more detail. The death and the suffering at the hand of religious and governmental leaders. He will be killed, but he'll rise again. And here he tells them in more detail than he's ever said before. He said, taking the 12, he said, "See, we are going up to Jerusalem," Jerusalem on a hill, "and everything that is written about the Son of Man by the prophets will be accomplished." So he references the prophets here when he talks about Son of Man. That's that Daniel reference and throughout that book. "For he will be delivered over to the Gentiles and will be mocked and shamefully treated and spit upon." Remember that phrase, spit upon. "And after flogging him, they will kill him. And on the third day he will rise." But they understood none of these things. They didn't get it. This saying was hidden from them, and they did not grasp what was said. So once again, the disciples are blind to what Jesus is saying. They don't ask any questions of him that we know of. Theirs was not a physical impairment of blindness, but a spiritual one. And this is happening right before Passion Week. The disciples have been walking with Jesus for several years now, and they've seen and heard his teachings, yet they can't see the truth of who Jesus is. And as a good Jewish man, they would have recognized the term Son of Man from the prophet Daniel, just like we recognize different phrases or turn of phrase from a song or a popular movie. It just is part of the culture, the Son of Man. But Jesus is redefining that term by attaching the language from the prophet Isaiah. So let's look at both passages, the one in Daniel and then the one that he references in Isaiah. In Daniel 7 it says, "I saw the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, there came one like the Son of Man." There it is. Daniel says it. "And he came to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him." Before God, and it was said to him, "And to him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him." This is what the Son of Man would do. "His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom one that shall not be destroyed." You can see here why those who followed Jesus and the disciples, that they thought he was going to take over politically, right? I mean, a kingdom that's never going to go away. We live in a time in history post-crucifixion, resurrection, and ascension where we know what was meant here. We understand what it is that Jesus is saying, or that the prophet was saying. But for the disciples, this was simply a word of a political triumph, not death. So then Jesus brings in another prophet by which was written about him. In Isaiah 50 verse 6, he says, we see a more appropriate description. It says, I gave back to those who strike, and my cheeks to those who pull out the beard. And here it is. I hid not my face from disgrace and spitting. Remember that? He said they're going to spit on me. And yet Isaiah says that is the Son of Man. That is the Messiah that will be spit upon. And Jesus speaks to his disciples and combines these two passages to show them that his triumph is not one of government. It's not one of politics. It's a triumph over death through death. He will endure suffering in order to share with us his victory. Unfortunately, the ones closest to him, those who should be able to see him for who he is, were so committed to the version of Jesus they really wanted, the one who would destroy their earthly enemies, that they couldn't see him, even though he was standing right in front of them, revealing what was about to happen. They were spiritually blind. So, this time it seems like when he's telling them of his death and resurrection, he keeps teaching them in a more practical way and more details about suffering and spitting to see him through the different lenses that the one they've seen their whole life. But as the curtain falls on Act 1, it rises on Act 2, because he's not just the Son of Man. He's not just the one that triumphs over death. He's also the Son of David. He's not their version of a God who comes to earth to establish his kingdom. He's the one and only God who takes on our humanity in order to unite us to his divinity. We see Jesus responding in that way to this blind man. So let's look at that. Remember scene 1, his conversation with the disciples, the Son of Man talk just ended. Now we move straight into the scene 2. As he draws near to Jericho, a blind man was sitting by the roadside begging, and hearing a crowd going by, he inquired, what's going on? So he hears, but he can't see. And when they tell him it's Jesus of Nazareth walking by, he doesn't even hesitate. He says, please heal me, Jesus. And the disciples want to quiet him. And he has nothing to say with that. He says, please heal me, cries out again. And Jesus turns and heals him. And it's one of my favorite stories because this man is considered by all as a nobody. And here he's more than just a nobody. He is an annoying nobody, right? He is the one who won't shut up. It's as if he's already a shame and disgrace to the town. And here's this important religious leader coming through. And he should just know better than just sit there and be invisible like he always does. They want to tell him, you don't matter. Just be quiet. Don't draw more attention to the disgrace of a person that you are. That is the attitude that he gets. He's a blind beggar. But there is a little bit of a problem, quote unquote. It's that Jesus doesn't see him that way. He loves him. He loves him with the 1 Corinthians 13 love that we read about in our epistle. So Jesus surprises everyone. He doesn't ignore him. He brings him forward. He puts him up front and center and gives a platform because his voice matters. Jesus asks what he wants. He gets to say that in front of everybody. Now everyone is listening to the one man that they all disregarded. Can you see how relational Jesus is? Do you see how he wants us to be one with him, no matter who we are, no matter what our status is, no matter how much you know about the Bible or how long you've gone to church, or whether your mama and daddy went to church, or whether your grandmother prayed over you, he loves you. The one thing that he could be the one thing is that he could be just the Son of Man. He could be just this triumphant one over death, the one who comes in flesh to destroy all evil and set us free. And he could go on and just be king and reign over everyone. But he's not. He's also the Son of David, the one who is familiar to our pain and our suffering, the one who wants to hear our voice and tells us that he cares, the one who invites us to be one with him and share in his glory. So today, as we go home, as we begin to prepare our hearts for Lent, think about both the Son of Man, the triumphant one, and the Son of David, humanity, human made flesh to redeem our flesh. The one and only God who calls us to himself, who walks alongside of us as the Son of David and invites us to conquer and reign with him as the Son of Man, to bring healing and his glory wherever we go. Amen.